Bada bing, bada boom. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We've got our review of the first derivative. So what do we need to get down in our notebook about the first derivative? Well, here it is. Anytime you see these words, increasing, decreasing, maximum, minimum, extrema, we need to make sure that we are taking a first derivative. So basically, I've tried to pull up a bunch of first derivative type questions. So here's number 1. The graph of f prime, the derivative of above, is shown above. Which of the following statements is true about f? So remember, you always want to say set the derivative equal to 0. That is your first move. Now, who does this happen to be? It already is f prime, so I'm not looking at its slope. I'm literally just looking to see when it hits 0. So I would say my critical points are -3 and 0. I'm going to quickly put them on a sign chart. Again, this already is f prime, so f prime is positive, negative, and positive. I'm looking at where it's sitting versus its slope. Since these two match, I'm just looking at where it's sitting. Therefore, I would say this function increases, decreases, and increases, creating a max and a min. Now I'm going to go tackle some of these questions. F is increasing from -2 to 2. Well, that wasn't even an option on my sign chart. Decreasing from -4 to 2. That wasn't even an option on my sign chart. I have a min at -2. That was not an option. I have a max at -3. I would say that's definitely true. And then let's just read choice E. F is not differentiable at -2 and 1. And that's the bear trap a lot of you like to fall in. That is actually a false statement. At -2 and 1, well, first of all, at -2, I want you to make a note, f prime is not differentiable. Okay? Not f. F prime is not differentiable because this is a graph of f prime. If I'm staring at f prime, guess what? F had to have been differentiable everywhere. So I think the one that makes the most sense would be choice D. Next question, let f be the function with its derivative on which of the following functions is f increasing? So let's get that highlighter out. The key word you have to catch is increasing. Every time you see something increasing or decreasing, you are looking at its derivative. Now it says the derivative of f, so I am looking at f prime. Basically, kill this word and write in the word derivative. Which of the following intervals is f's derivative? You need the derivative of f. Now, why is this question handy? Well, they already gave it to you. So one thing some of us are slacking on is when you have a fraction, we want to make sure we set both the denominator and the numerator equal to 0. Okay, so let me just remind you, a critical point is when the derivative equals 0 and when the derivative does not exist, which is when that denominator equals 0. So I'm going to say 1 minus x squared equals 0. 1 equals x squared. I should get x equals plus and minus 1. And then here, the cubed root of x equals 0. Cube both sides. X equals 0. Now, we can't actually answer this question until we make a sign chart and actually run through this. So, let me just scroll up here. On my sign chart, I'm going to use my critical points, which of course were -1, 0, and 1. I'm plugging them back into the derivative. So be careful when you have a fraction. We want to make sure we go back into f prime. So I'm going to start with a 2. 1 minus 2 squared is negative. The cube root of 2 is positive, so that's a negative. If I plug in a -1, a 1/2. 1 minus 1/2 squared, so that's 1 minus 1/4 is positive. The cube root of a half is a positive. If I plug in a -1/2, 1 minus -1/2 squared is still 1 minus 1/4, so that's positive. The cube root of a negative is a negative, so that's a negative. If I plug in a -2, that's 1 minus 4 squared, which is negative, and the cube root of -2 is a negative, which makes that a positive. So, what can I say? I would say, now notice I think these choices, let me scroll back, are about the function increasing. So I would say it's increasing from -infinity to -1 and 0 to 1. So let's look at these choices. -infinity to -1 and 0 to 1. So I'm going to go with D, options 2 and 3 only. Next question. The graph of f prime is shown on what intervals is f decreasing? So again, grab that highlighter. Whoops, that's not a highlighter. decreasing was my key word. Okay, and every time I see this decreasing, I have to, like, basically in my head say, cross it off and say that means derivative. Derivative of who? Here's what they want, the derivative of f. Now, how convenient. You happen to be staring at the derivative of f. So again, I'm going to get my critical points. Set the derivative equal to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. So -5, -3, 2, and 5. The derivative is positive, the derivative is negative, and then negative again. So I wanted to know when I was decreasing, I would say from -3 to -2, and 2 to 5. Now here's what I don't like about this AP question, and I think it's actually incorrect. -3 to 2, and 2 to 5. This should have been in 2 separate intervals, and it wasn't. So whoever wrote this question did it incorrectly, and I think it was just a practice somebody wrote for an AP, but it is not correctly stated. It should be from -3 to 2 and 2 to 5. Now, since that isn't an option, the only one that makes the most sense is -3 to 2. They only included this one interval instead of listing them both out. Our next question is extremely common. We've seen it on almost every multiple choice test we've taken. State whether f is increasing at an increasing rate, increasing at a decreasing rate, decreasing at an increasing rate, or decreasing at a decreasing rate. And it's very simple to find. Again, if you want to know if something's increasing or decreasing, those key words should be telling you to take the derivative. So I'm going to find the derivative in between each of these. And you're always going to do the terms next to each other. So I'm going to do change in y over change in x. So 9 minus 7 is 2, and 3 minus 2 is 1. So I'm going to say that is a slope of 2. So this is my f prime column. I'm going to do 9 to 12. 12 minus 9 is 3. 4 minus 3 is 1. So that's a slope of 3. And 16 minus 12 is 4. 5 minus 4 is 1. That's a slope of 4. So let's answer the first part of the question. F prime is a what type of number? F prime is greater than 0. All of these numbers were greater than 0, which tells me that F is increasing. Okay, since F prime is positive, F is increasing. Now I'm just going to look at what those numbers did. What did my slopes do? F prime went from 2 to 3 to 4. It increased. So I would say F is increasing at an increasing rate. All right, so let's go ahead and try the next one. So again, my goal is to make a column for F prime and talk about all the slopes. So I'm doing change in y over change in x. So that's 12 minus 16, so that's a -4, divided by the change in x, which is 2. So I'm going to say I have a slope of -2. Do the next two. 8 minus 12 is -4. 6 minus 3 is 3, so I'm going to get a -4 thirds. Again, 4 minus 8 is -4. 10 minus 6 is 4, so I'm getting a slope of -1. Okay, so let's first just talk about f prime. F prime is less than 0, which means f prime is negative. Therefore, f is decreasing. How is it decreasing? Now look at your f prime row. I went from -2 to -4 thirds to -1. Picture a number line. Here's 0. I went from -2 to -4 thirds to -1. I actually increased because I'm getting closer to 0. So I would say f is decreasing at an increasing rate. Okay, now here are more of the word problems that we seem to be struggling with for some reason, and I can't stress enough. Increasing, decreasing, max, min, take the derivative. Water flow is defined as the rate at which water passes through the pipe in liters per second. So what should you have in your notebook? This is water flow, it is a rate, and it's in liters per second. The water flow of a particular pipeline is modeled by this function. So even though they didn't call it W prime, I want you to be very clear that it is a rate. It is a rate. So is the water flow increasing or decreasing at t equals 4? Okay, so here's what you're doing in your notebook. You're saying increasing or decreasing. Ding, ding, ding. That means take a derivative. So I'm going to clear that and write the word derivative. Now it's not like a trick now, you just read. The derivative of what? What do they want the derivative of? Water flow. Who does this happen to be? Water flow. So I know for part A, I need to find W prime of 4. Okay, so the question is, does that make sense to you? It said increasing or decreasing, which told me to take a derivative. It says of water flow, this happens to be water flow, so I am deriving water flow. So again, I'm just going to do the setup, I'm not going to evaluate them. That is telling me to take the derivative. Part B, is the water flow increasing or decreasing, and then at an increasing or decreasing rate. So once I found out what my W prime of 4 is, whether it's positive or negative, and I'll go ahead and do that, and I got 2.475, I can now say the water flow is increasing. Now to determine whether it's increasing at an increasing or decreasing rate, I'm now going to derive it again. So now I basically be finding W double prime at 4. So I would take the derivative twice, and then I could, based off that number, tell whether it's increasing or decreasing. All right, so this one is slightly different. So again, let's get the key terms down. From 0 to 30, the rate of change of the number of flies on Coral Island is modeled by this. So again, notice they're telling you it is the rate of change of what? The number of flies. So I want to be very clear, and this is what I do on my exam, is I'll say to myself, this is the derivative of the number of flies. Sounds like a great place to visit. This is the derivative of the number of flies on the island. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Even though it doesn't say F prime, it already is the derivative. Part A, is the number of flies increasing or decreasing? So again, here's how I'm attacking my problems. I'm crossing off increasing and decreasing. I'm saying, okay, that means take the derivative of what? The number of flies. So I want to be clear, for part A, I need the derivative of the number of flies. Now look at this. What did f of t represent? What did I rewrite for myself? It already is the derivative of the number of flies. So I am not taking its derivative. I am simply plugging in f of 3 and determining whether it's positive or negative. And I got negative 15, which means the number of flies is decreasing. Now, if I want to see if it's decreasing at an increasing rate or a decreasing rate, I now will take its derivative. So I will now evaluate f prime of 3 for part B to see if it's decreasing at an increasing rate or decreasing at an increasing rate. So what is one moral of the story tonight? Is that I really need you to understand that anytime we see those key terms, increasing, decreasing, max, min, extrema, okay, they're all telling you to take the derivative and, of course, set it equal to 0. And I think that's been a common theme in our mistakes here, is that if you don't know what to do, set the derivative equal to 0.